My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Today on the Expect Miracles podcast, we have Dean Malanga. I have known Dean since we started playing hockey together at the age of 10. Dean has one of the most inspiring stories you will ever hear. Dean shares his comeback story of addiction, the dark places it brought him to, the people that were affected, and how rock bottom can be a foundation where you can completely rebuild your life and make it absolutely beautiful again. Dean owns every inch of his story. He lays all the cards out on the table. It is very real, and that is what I love most about it. Dean has now dedicated his life to helping others heal from addiction in any way he can. This episode is dedicated to the beautiful people and loved ones we have lost to this disease and to the loved ones that are still fighting. Please welcome Dean Malanga. Dean, how you doing today?
I'm good, Kev. How you doing, man?
Good. Dean's got a really amazing story. Really excited to jump into it today. It's one of the most amazing stories you'll probably hear. I'm real excited to jump into it. So, Dean, where are you from originally?
So I grew up in a small town down in the Jersey Shore called Lavallette.
Beautiful down there.
When people don't know where it is, I say, well, have you ever seen the show Jersey Shore? That's in Seaside, and that's like 2 towns away from me.
Exactly.
Yeah, so a real small town. It's like 2 miles wide.
What's it like growing up down there? Because, it gets pretty bare in the winter, right?
It's a ghost town in the wintertime. Yeah. I mean, ghost town. I would be able to drive from Point Pleasant, which is 10 miles away, down to Lavallette on Route 35 and see maybe 2 cars.
Jeez.
In the summertime, it's a different story.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy down here in the summertime. I live in Point Pleasant now. I bought a house in Point Pleasant about a year ago now. I'll be here for about a year in June.
Nice. And what were you into growing up?
Well, growing up by the beach, surfing. When I was really young, I was at the beach every day. My parents would bring me up to the beach every day. Everything, bodyboarding, surfing. Surfing was a huge part of my life until my dad got me into fishing.
Yeah.
And, I started fishing. My grandfather was a big fisherman. I started fishing with my dad, and I fell in love with it. And when I was 13, I got a job on a fishing boat out in Point Pleasant. From there on out, I worked on that boat on and off every summer until I was about, I want to say 22 or 23.
And you got to wake up ridiculously early for that, right?
Well, yeah, at the time I thought it was ridiculously early, but now I wake up for work at 3:30 in the morning. Jeez. So it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
I had to be at the boat at 6 a.m. So I was up it's funny, I would get up around 5:15, and my grandfather loved the fact that I was working on a fishing boat. So my grandmother would make me a bacon, egg, and cheese every morning, and my grandfather would bring it. I'll never forget. He'd bring it over wrapped up in tinfoil and a chocolate milk.
Hell yeah.
Drive me to the boat every morning.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
I met you through playing hockey since we were 10.
Yeah.
How did you get into hockey? Your brother or?
I guess my dad was always a hockey fan.
Okay.
He started my brother playing roller hockey, and then, I'm 2 years younger than my brother. We all started playing roller hockey. And he started a little league in Lavallette.
Nice.
Which it was hard to field a team. I mean, for example, Lavallette grade school, kindergarten through 8th grade, there was right around 100 kids in the entire school.
Wow.
My 8th grade class, I didn't stay there. In 6th grade, I went to a different school, but my 8th grade class graduated with 13 kids. So we had this really small team called the Lavallette Lasers. That's where it all started. And then we played at the Atlantic Club. They had a little roller hockey rink set up in the parking lot. I used to get dressed at my house in Lavallette. I'm telling you,
full gear.
I would sit in the back seat with my helmet on, my gloves, and pull up to the rink and get out and skate up.
Just ready to go.
Yeah, man.
Unreal.
That's where it all started. And then I guess squirts is when I started playing ice hockey. I started playing in-house ice hockey at Bricktown and then the Eagle. That's where I met you, right?
I think we were 10.
Yeah. We played for Mark Stahl, right? Wasn't that our
Yeah,
coach?
Mark Stahl.
Yeah.
That was my first travel team. That was unreal.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah, but that's where ice hockey started for me. I pretty much gave up roller hockey and I just played straight ice hockey.
Yeah. And then it made a huge impact on your life where you went to high school for it.
Oh yeah. You know what it's like. I mean, God bless our parents for like taking the time out of their lives to help us. Every practices late at night, getting up at dawn 5 a.m. to bring us to practices, traveling all over this place to bring us to games. Playing on a travel hockey team, definitely, like, you have to be committed. But it was so much fun. I mean, it was awesome going away to tournaments, staying in hotels, playing mini hockey in the
Dude, that was the best.
elevators. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, man, I just fell in love with hockey. And I was playing baseball and soccer when I was younger. And I started playing ice hockey and I was still playing soccer. And I had to make a decision between soccer and ice hockey. And like, it was like hands down ice hockey.
Yeah, no brainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I was a little too physical for soccer anyway.
Yeah, dude, you were always way bigger than everybody else.
Yeah, I was a big boy when I was a kid. I definitely haven't gotten any smaller either.
When did all this start for you, what we're about to get into?
My addiction issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I always like to start from the beginning because there's this like common misconception and there's this common stigma about people who suffer from addiction problems or alcohol problems, that especially addiction problems, people think that from people who have a bad upbringing or come from a shattered home or live in the inner city, but that's not the case. It affects everybody. And if anybody says that it doesn't, then they're lying to themselves. Like,
doesn't matter how much money you have. It
doesn't matter where you live, how much money you have. You could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer. Like, that's it. This disease doesn't discriminate. Like, it affects everybody. Like, you can go into a room full of 20 people and ask them to raise their hand if they know somebody who's struggling with addiction or alcoholism. And I guarantee you 15 or all of them will raise their hand and say, I have a family member, I have a friend. It affects everybody.
Yeah, which I'm sure we'll get into later.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk for like 10 hours about this stuff because it's something I'm passionate about because it's terrible out there. I mean, for example, Mike Siglinski, man, best friend in high school. We grew up playing hockey with him forever. He was 28 years old the day before his 29th birthday.
Yeah.
Overdose.
It's probably bad everywhere, but I feel like most people in New Jersey know somebody that's had a good friend, family members, passed away from pills, or especially the pills now.
Yeah, man. Well, the pills now, that's how I got started, was the Percocets, the Oxycontin. So I got started when I was my freshman summer of college. When I came home from school, I was introduced to Oxycontin for the first time. And like, at this point in my life, like, I went away to college, and my freshman year, you know, I made the varsity hockey team. Like, I was doing great. I was playing first line defense. It was awesome. I did great in school. I was a nursing major. I had like super hard classes. You know, I got all A's and B's. But like, when I went into college, like, I went into school with this mentality that like, this was my time to like experiment. This was my time to have fun. I was fully committed to the education aspect of it, but I was going to have fun. I was going to experiment. I was going to try new things. And I did. I know, like, a couple weeks into my first semester up there, I was at a party at the hockey house, and which was just like 5 guys on the hockey team, older guys, all like juniors, seniors. So they all liked me because I was a good hockey player, fun to be around. I'll never forget it. The one kid who asked me, like, come upstairs. He's like, I got to show you something. And I went into the room. There was like 4 other kids on the team, and they were doing cocaine. And I was like, I've never seen it in my life. Growing up, dude, I told myself, like, I would never touch that stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? I would never go near that stuff. I told myself I would never smoke pot. I told myself I would never drink until I was 21. And then I got to high school and I started drinking, and I was like, all right, I'm drinking. I'll never smoke pot. And then I started smoking pot. I was like, okay, well, I'm never going to do any hard drugs. And then that night at that hockey house, I tried cocaine for the first time. And I guess my brain's wired differently than people because I fell in love with it. Granted, I knew it was bad, but everybody was doing it. It was like socially acceptable in that scene. Mm-hmm. I did it on the weekends, but I would party Friday, Saturday night, and then I'd go to class Monday through Friday, study for my test. You know what I mean? Go to hockey practice, go to hockey games on the weekend.
Very high functioning, but having fun at the same time.
Yeah. At this point, it was all fun. Like, I haven't crossed that. Like, you know, people talk about that imaginary line where, like, once they cross that, like, no turning back. Like at this point, like it was all fun for me because I was still doing what I had to do.
Right.
That happened. I did that my freshman year. I had a great time. I got good grades. I partied. I did great in hockey. And then I went home and started working on the fishing boat again. And I'm pretty sure anywhere you go and there's a fishing town or some kind of fishing industry, there's a big scene of drugs and alcohol. It's just fishermen are notorious drinkers and druggers. And I met a guy, I worked with this guy in the boat, and he said, Percocets, you want to try one? And again, like I'll go back to that mentality I have like at this point in my life where I was like, yeah, why not? Like I want to experience it. So I tried one. Whatever. I knew it made me feel good, but it wasn't like I did that and then from there on off, I was gone. I did them a few more times that summer, and that was that.
It is scary how good they make you feel. Like
it is.
It takes you to like a whole different realm that you've never thought was possible.
Yep, exactly. I mean, it's scary. And like I'll get into like the whole opiates later, just the whole thing with Purdue Pharmaceutical and all that BS and how they marketed it back in the day. But yeah, like you said, it takes you to a different level. You feel great. Like nothing can hurt you. You're just in a great mood. And like I said, I did them a couple times that summer. I still drank a lot and I partied a lot that summer, but I was working on the boat. I was making money. And then I went back to college for my sophomore year. Now, when I got back to school this time, I got a house with like 4 other kids in the hockey team. We got this cool little house right off campus. You know, I wasn't in the dorms anymore. So I had the freedom to like do whatever I want. I mean, I didn't have to worry about my RA walking in on me or getting in trouble because it smells like pot. Like it was my house.
Yeah.
So I could do what I wanted. I started off the semester strong. I was named captain of my hockey team my sophomore year, but the partying started like slowly taking over. Like in the beginning of the semester, attending all my classes. Halfway through the semester, I started skipping out on a class here and there, drinking a lot during weeknights. By my second semester up there, I was drinking every night. I was doing a lot of cocaine, man. Like I can look back now and see like this is like a warning signal, like a red flag. Like it's easy to look back now in my past and see where like my addiction started, and I just see with a clear mind. And this is one of those times when I would get home from class and I would pick up a 12-pack on the way home and I would drink all 12 beers and I would smoke. And then by the end of the night, I was going out and trying to find cocaine, and I'm in my room by myself, like not even like going out to a party.
It's no longer social. It's like,
yeah, I mean, like it wasn't like I was locking myself away. Like I would still go out with my friends on the weekends and everything. But like when I couldn't get any of them to like tag along with me, I was still going to do it. But in my mind, I told myself like, this is what everybody's doing now. This is college. This is what you do in college. Like that was my sick thinking. So obviously my grades started to suffer. Stopped. Like I didn't go to as many classes. By the end of my second semester, I was like in full on party mode. I got my grades back, and to stay in that nursing program, I think it was like a 2.85 or a 2.95 GPA. And I got 0.5 below what I needed to stay into the program. So I got this letter in the mail saying, you're no longer in the nursing program, but you can come back to East Stroudsburg for the summertime and take classes. And if you pass these classes, we'll allow you back in. And my mind was set. Like I grew up at the beach. Like I wanted to be home. I wanted to be near the ocean. I wanted to be fishing. I wanted to be hanging out with my friends. So like that whole mindset I had about going into college, like this is, hockey's cool, like playing sports in college is cool, but this is about bettering my future, getting a degree. That was out the window at this point.
Yeah.
I just said, screw that. I'm not going back to landlocked Pennsylvania for the summertime. Like I want to stay here and party, and I want to drink. And like, that's what made my decision. I was so terrified of not being able to do that, as if I was missing out on like some great experience.
But that's honestly how you feel as a 20-year-old. Like,
yeah,
that's all that's going on. You're like, this is it.
Exactly. Yep. I thought that was like the whole world. I made the decision not to go back to East Stroudsburg. I just told my parents it's not what I wanted to do. So I started looking at other schools that summer, but that summer is also when my real addiction issues started with the Percocet. Working on the fishing boat, and I'd walk off the fishing boat, $250 in cash every day. And In the beginning of summer, I would still going out with my friends and drinking and everything, but I was doing Percocets. And I would go to work in the morning. I would take all my money and buy the pills with it at the end of the day. And it was just a vicious cycle. It was over and over. And there was no awareness about them. This is when the whole epidemic started, because nobody talked about them. There was no education. There was nothing. So I didn't know you could get addicted to them. I didn't know there was withdrawals. I didn't know how dangerous they were. I just knew they made me feel good. And I just knew a lot of people that were doing them.
Yeah. And they were just giving them out like candy. The doctors get out an ACL injury. Boom. Here's a huge script for you. It's It was unbelievable.
Yeah. It's you get your simple shoulder injury or something. It's here's 20 Percocet 30 milligrams. Are you kidding me? You know what I mean?
Bad news.
So the market was just flooded with these things. And that also goes back to Purdue Pharmaceuticals when they campaigned and they were introducing these back in the day, or OxyContin, I guess it started out as. They had all these giant conventions and they flew all these doctors in, put them up in a nice hotel, fed them, and introduced Percocet or OxyContin, whatever they introduced, saying less than 1% chance of addiction. Basically blatantly lied. Doctors, they didn't know any better. They listened to the professionals.
Yeah.
So somebody comes in with a shoulder injury or a simple pull the muscle in their back. Oh, here's 20. This is a miracle drug.
Yeah.
20 Percocets. Here's 30 Percocets. So these people are getting all these and they're just taking it through whatever, put them in their medicine cabinets, and then they're all over the place.
Yeah. It's a $1 billion industry.
Yeah, man. So that summer, I was doing a lot, 3-4 a day, spending a lot of money on them. I still didn't know I was going to get these withdrawals from. At the end of the summer, over the summertime, I got into a school called SUNY Maritime. I think the only reason I got in was because the hockey coach grew up in Bricktown and he knew Brick Hockey Club. And I guess he knew of me from playing at Brick. Mm-hmm. And he went I remember going to Maritime that summer, and he brought me in with my application to the admissions counselor. And he came out of his office and was like, "You're in." That's this was something cool, Maritime. I actually looked at this school before any nursing or radiology schools, merchant marine. So you're on a ship, you're on a tugboat, and me being on boats my whole life, that was perfect for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was excited to start there. I remember getting up there the first week of classes, and I woke up on a Monday and I felt like I had the flu, and I was like, "What's going on?" I remember talking to my parents, I'm sick. I think I got the flu. And they're like, "Oh my God, it's first day of class and he's sick." Yeah. So it passed after 3 or 4 days or whatever. And I got over it. But I had this insane anxiety and this insane depression, which I've never experienced in my life. I was always a happy kid. There's no history of it in my family. And I remember experiencing this. And I thought it was because I went from East Stroudsburg, where I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted to. It was a paramilitary school. I'm wearing a uniform every day. I'm waking up at 5:30, 6 a.m. to go salute the flag, no matter what the weather is. Room inspections. I had to be clean shaven every morning. So I thought that's why I was getting these.
You just had a lot more going on. You thought it was that?
Exactly. It took me a while to put 2 and 2 together, because I would go home every weekend from Maritime and I would get high, I would do pills, I would drink, I would party, and then I'd go back to school on Monday and get these crazy feelings of anxiety. I remember calling my parents up, crying my eyes out, saying, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like I just need to run." That, it was crazy, Kevin, man. I just felt like I wanted to just get up and run.
You feel like you had to work it out or sweat it out or something?
It wasn't even that. It was just this restlessness and this crazy feeling of anxiety and sadness, and I just needed to get away. I had nowhere to go, but I just knew I needed to run.
And how long were those waves lasting for?
It would be intense for 2 days, and then it would kind of taper off. My dad would talk me off the ledge, or I would just kind of just tough it out and just fight through it. I realized later that these withdrawals I were having then were nothing compared to what was to come. That year, I told my parents I had all these issues, and they set me up with a therapist who I would go and talk to. They also set me up with which doctor's the one that can prescribe pills, psychiatrist or psychologist?
I think it's psychiatrist.
Okay. I got an appointment with her, and this is another pet peeve I have. I mean, I sat down with her 20 minutes, my first appointment with her. She asked me, what's school like? What was I feeling? And within 20 minutes of talking to me, apparently she knew that I had depression, anxiety, and ADHD.
Jesus.
So I walked out of there with a prescription to Lexapro, Xanax, Klonopin, and Adderall.
No way.
Yep.
One session.
Yeah. Somebody like me who opiates is what brought me to my knees, but it didn't matter what it was at this point. If it made me feel differently than what I felt, it was okay by me. So I walked out of there like I hit the lottery.
Oh, yeah.
I was sick, man. I mean, and I remember getting those prescriptions filled up, and I was like, this is great. I'm going to do great in school because I have Adderall. And like, I've experimented with Adderall at East Stroudsburg, studying for exams and everything.
You now had things to combat the lows.
Yep. I had bottles. I mean, it was like a roller coaster. You know, Xanax are downers, Adderall are uppers. So I'm like nonstop. I didn't even take the Lexapro. I remember at one point I had like 7 or 8 filled bottles of Lexapro just sitting in my room because I just didn't take them because I thought I didn't need them.
Yeah.
At this point, I realized that anxiety and that depression was from the withdrawals.
Yeah.
Didn't stop me though. I think at this point I was like right there. I was walking a fine line, and like it didn't take much time for me to like step over that imaginary line. So I went back, I finished school, and I actually did really good in school that year. I mean, all A's and B's.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So were you keeping it to the weekends at that point, or was it dabbling in?
At that point, it was the weekends for the Percocets and everything, besides like the Adderall and the Xanax and the Klonopin. Like I really didn't even take that many of them. I didn't really like that downer feeling. Like it sounds stupid because the Percocets are basically the same thing, but the Xanax, like I remember just taking them and not remembering anything. You know what I mean? Like at one point, like I lost days because like it's crazy. They just like, it's sad, man. I mean, so like I would do the Adderall during the week, and then I'd go home and I'd do the Percocets, and I'd come back to school, and the Adderall helped with the withdrawals because it gave me energy and it kept me going when the withdrawals from the Percocets wanted to bring me down. It put me in a good mood. So I went home that summer. I got all good grades. My parents were like really happy.
Yeah.
Went back to work on the fishing boat. This is the summer that like things turned. Definitely crossed that imaginary line. I'm doing pills every day, going out, drinking. I mean, everything. Like you put it in front of me, man. It was like, I wasn't going to leave it. I wasn't going to say no. I went back to Maritime, and somewhere during that school year, I was home one weekend. I was trying to find Percocets. I was doing the same old thing, and they were drying up, I guess, or getting harder to find. They're becoming more expensive. And the girl who I was getting them from said, hey, like, I can get you these, but I got to go here and I got to pick something up for myself. I said, all right, let's go. And I remember her getting back into my car, and she had these little like white squares. And I was like, what's that? She's like, oh, it's heroin.
Oh, geez.
Really? You know, how much does that cost? This little square is only $10. And I was at this point, I was spending $30 for a Perc 30. And I was like, and what's the equivalent of that to the Percocet? She's like, strong. It's like maybe 1 or 2 bags is equal to Percocet. So here I could get 3 Percocets for $100, or I can get 10 bags of heroin. And I was like, let me buy 2 of those from you. So, okay. And after that day, I never bought another Percocet again. I tried the heroin.
Put it all on the table, dude. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm not ashamed of it anymore. It's part of my life. It made me who I am today. And like, I'm just going to get real. And at this point, I was still sniffing them. Like the Percocets, like I was always sniffing them. The heroin, when I started doing it, I was sniffing it. So then I started going, I would go back to Maritime, come back on the weekend and get a bunch of heroin, go back. Still had my prescriptions to all the other drugs that I was prescribed to. I stopped going to class.
How did you look at this point? Like, did anybody at this point pull you aside, like, yo, Dean, are you good? Like, are you okay? Or like, still really had it together?
I somewhat had it together. I was able to save face, like in front of my parents and my family. And like, I talked to my mom about it now, and she's like, I knew something was wrong. She's like, mother's intuition. But at this point, she didn't know what it was. Like, she thought I was still like had the mental issues that were brought on by drugs and alcohol,
Right.
depression and the anxiety. She didn't know that what was really going on.
Yeah. And she didn't want to think that either.
Exactly. Like her sweet little boy, there's no way he's doing heroin. Like, no way. Right.
Yeah.
So I was back in the Bronx. This is where that school is. It's in the Bronx. Finished out that semester. My grades weren't great. I almost got kicked out. They were like, all right, we'll let you come back for another year. If you can bring your grades up, we'll let you stay. So that summer I went back to Jersey, went back to the fishing boat, same old thing. Make $200, $250, $300 a day, spend it all on drugs. Go back the next day, do the same thing. I mean, just nonstop. I was never home. Like, this is when my parents started to worry about me, but I held it all together somehow. I knew at this point, like, I was full blown addicted. And I always told myself, I was like, once I graduate school and I get my degree and I get a real job, I'll stop. Or once I get a girlfriend who I'm serious with, I'll stop. And it was like always these outside forces that I told myself, like, if this happens or that happens, then I'll stop. I was so dumb at that point that, like, I didn't realize it had to, like, I had to want it. Because I had that girlfriend. The degree wasn't it, but like I thought, I was like, oh, I'm dating this girl now. I really like her. Maybe she'll help me straighten out. That wasn't the case at all. Cycle capped up. I went back to Maritime, and I mean, I basically sat in my room during the week and just sat on my computer. Like, that's all I did. Like, I would barely leave the room. And remember, like, this is a school that randomly drug tests you. They knock on your door at like 5:30 in the morning and say, hey, come on, you're coming to get a drug test because you're working on shift. You're responsible for other people's lives. I was always terrified of that. So I would set my alarm for like 4:30 in the morning, and I would just leave my room. And
No way.
Yeah, I would just go hide out like downstairs in like one of the common areas in the dorms. My roommates called me, then I knew I had to go take a drug test, but I knew I could like somehow cheat or somehow, like, I was always scheming. Like, my mind was running 24/7, scheming. So needless to say, like, that year,
You
like,
must have been exhausted.
Dude, it was the most exhausting thing you could ever imagine. I mean, it's like, I can't even believe, like, now I'm coming up on 4 years sober, and I look back and, like, every day I think about it because it's like good to keep it fresh in my mind, to remind myself, like, I never want to go back to that place ever again. Like you said, it was just exhausting. So I got really, on the weekends, got really heavy into the heroin, and I started, like, I would come back to school on Monday and I would still, like, maybe have a couple bags left. So I would do them Monday, but then by Tuesday afternoon, I mean, I was freaking out, like, stuck in this dorm room, like, had all these, like, this weight on my shoulders, like, my parents are paying for my college. I'm not even going to class. I haven't been to class. Like, I haven't passed a test. I have all these responsibilities. And like I said, like, that need to run. I would leave my room. I'd walk off campus to the bus stop, BX40. I forget the name of the bus. I would take the BX40 to another stop in the Bronx and get on the BMX9 and take that into Manhattan. So it was about 10-minute bus ride to the BMX9, then a 45-minute bus ride from there to Penn Station. Then I would jump on a train in Penn Station, hour and 45-minute train ride back down to Point Pleasant. I'd meet up with somebody, get what I could with the money I had, that I was making up excuses to my parents why I needed money at school. They'd put it in my account. I'd use that to get home. I'd meet up with them for maybe 20 minutes, and I'd jump back on the next train. Hour and 45 minutes back to the city, 45 minutes back to the Bronx, and another 10 minutes back to campus. I wouldn't go to any classes during the day. I mean, that's what I did. And then I'd be good for another like 2 days, and then I'd go home on the weekend and just keep going. I failed all my classes. That was that. I remember going back to New Jersey, and
for another summer, or is it a different, what month is it at this point?
It was the summertime. Backtrack a little bit, like at that point in that year, I don't know if it was the summer before that or during that school year. You do this and you build up a tolerance, right? Maybe in the beginning, I was doing maybe 5 bags, and then a couple months later, I needed 10 to get any kind of a feeling. Then all of a sudden, I'm doing 20. You know what I mean? This kid who I was getting from, I met with him one night in Bricktown, and he was like, yo, man, you ever try using a needle? And I was like, no, I don't know how to do it. And he was like, I'll do it for you. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
And we were sitting in his car, and he put the needle in my arm. And from that point on, man, was
that a completely different level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're putting it right into your bloodstream as opposed to inhaling it up your nose, and then it has to go through those barriers. Whatever the science is behind it, you dissolve it in water and you put it right into your bloodstream. It hits you immediately. That was it. I was hooked from there on out. I mean, I was already hooked on the drug. Now I was hooked on the needle part of it. And it was almost like I was addicted to the drugs, but I was also addicted to like the ritual behind it. Like going to meet the drug dealer, getting it, sitting in my car, mixing it up. Like the whole thing was like part of my addiction. So now I'm 24 years old or living in my parents' house. I have 5 years of college under my belt with no degree to show for it, tons of student loans. I'm an active IV heroin addict, and I'm still hiding this from my parents. I didn't have a job at this point, and like I needed this drug to survive. With no money, like what do you do? For me, unfortunately, I lied to, I manipulated, I stole from the people that love me the most. My mother, my father, my sister, my brother. It didn't matter who you were, what your relationship was with me. My ex-girlfriend, I would take her debit card and go to the ATM and pull out $400. I mean, it did not matter. It turned me into like somebody I never thought I would be. Took over my life. I still debating, like the sick part of my mind thought like I would still be able to complete school for some reason while doing this. It's that thought that like, okay, today is going to be the last day. Tomorrow I'm going to stop.
When you're this far in, what is the mentality like? Do you think everything's like kind of good, even though it's like really not?
Yeah.
Do you think people are still like, you're not affecting anybody around you?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Like I thought that like I had everything under control. Like I was just under this mindset that like everything was going to work out. Like I didn't have to put any effort. Something was going to come to me. I thought like I was still hiding it good. Meanwhile, throughout my drug addiction, I've totaled 4 cars in accidents. I've walked away from every one. The last one was the worst, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But here I am home, and I got a job with one of my dad's friends doing sprinklers, and I did that for the summer. And then my friend from high school called me, one of my like best friends from high school. He was in a union, local 1556 is dock builders, so pile drivers, drilling in New York and Jersey. And he called me. He's like, listen, he goes, I mean, he still didn't know how bad I was. Like he knew like I partied and everything, but I hid it from everybody. Like I would just go over to my ex-girlfriend's house and just hide in her house. And like even her, like somehow I hid it from her too. Like, you know, I always had an excuse. I always had a lie. I was a really good manipulator. You know what I mean? I would do anything for like that next high, anything. And he called me up and he said, we're slammed. Our company's slammed. I can get you into the union full book, which means like usually there's a 5-year apprenticeship. You start out making a certain amount of money and each year you work your way up. He goes, I can get you in full book. You have to give me a commitment and say this is something you want to do. And I was like, yeah. In my mind, I'm like, this is what I needed to put all this behind me. Like I'll have a great job. Like it's a career job. You know, I'll make really good money. And this is what I thought was going to help me. And so here I go. I'm in a pile drivers union. I'm up in Weehawken on my first job, trying to hide everything. I go from really not making much money at all to making, you know, like $1,200 a week. This is great. I'll have money to get high. I'll have money to put gas in my car. I'll have money to eat.
To do everything you want to do.
Exactly. I get paid on a Thursday, anywhere between like $1,000 and $1,400, depending on how much overtime I work. And by Monday, Tuesday afternoon at the latest, it was all gone. I mean, my addiction went from here to like off the charts because I couldn't stop. Like it was just more and more and more. I have all these things and like this crazy weight on my shoulders, and I just needed to numb that. Like, and my life wasn't that bad. I mean, I had a family that loved me. I had a family that put a roof over my head, but I was just so far gone into this. Like there was no way I was getting out on my own. There was no way. It all came to like a head for the first time around Christmas 2014. I took my grandmother's credit cards. I went to JCPenney and I took out like $1,000 in gift certificates. Then I went to a pawn shop and I traded them in for like $500 cash just so I can get high. And sorry, my puppy's having a sneezing attack right now. My grandmother called my mother and was like, asked her, and she confronted me. And I broke down to him that night in my living room. And I said, I have a problem. I have an addiction problem. And my girlfriend at the time was there, crying my eyes out, trying to make everybody feel sorry for me. And my parents were shook. They were devastated. And of course, I didn't tell them the extent of it. I told them I was doing Percocets.
Mm-hmm.
I never told them I did anything intravenous or anything like that. So here I go for my first trip to detox. I went to a place called Discovery Institute in Marlboro. I remember that night I was leaving, and drugs were a huge part of my story, but like alcohol was right behind it. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, it didn't matter what it was. Like if I didn't have my drugs in the morning when I woke up, I was drinking vodka or gin. And I remember like drinking Snapple and vodka on the way to detox my first time. And I remember getting in that detox, feeling like crap for a few days. I started to feel better. I remember telling myself like, okay, I can't do heroin anymore. I can't do opiates anymore, but I'm still going to drink and I'm still going to smoke weed, still go out to the bars and maybe do a little cocaine, but I can't touch the opiates. From that detox, I was there for 7 days. They tried to get me into like an inpatient where I would stay there for 30 days. I said, no, I don't need that. So they're like, you can go to a intensive outpatient treatment, which is you get there at 8 a.m., you go through groups the whole day and you leave at 3 o'clock, 5 days a week. And they drug test you. I started doing that. Like 4 or 5 days into it, I was drinking again. Another couple of days, I was smoking weed again. And the next thing you know, I'm doing heroin again. Like I didn't see the progression at that point. Like I could look back and see how that affects me. Like that's why, I mean, I'm stone cold sober. I don't drink. I don't touch anything. Like everything is just off limits to me.
Right.
It took me a while to realize like that's what I needed to do to like get this under control. Right. So I go through this intensive outpatient treatment and I graduate. They graduated me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm still smoking weed and I'm cheating on the drug tests and I'm still getting high. And my parents are like, oh, they're like relieved that I'm doing good, and told them everything they wanted to hear. You know what I mean? Because I was so set on hiding this again. I went back to work in the union. I maybe made it another 2 or 3 months, I want to say. But the whole time I was getting high again. Started out slow, and within 2 weeks, progression took over and I was right back to where I left off. I was driving home from work one day and it was raining out. I was on Route 37 in Toms River. I think I nodded off while I was driving. I came to and there was a car, a red light, and I slammed on the brakes and I slid and turned and I bounced off, like kind of nicked that car and slammed into a pole, a red light, whatever, the pole that holds the lights up. And I like hit it. And the first thing that came to my mind was, all right, hide everything in my lunchbox that I brought to work, my little cooler. I put everything in there. Ambulance, cops showed up. I played it off like I was fine and it was just the rain. They were like, oh, you need to come to the hospital. I think I bit the inside of my mouth and I know I like separated my shoulder, but I told them I was fine. I needed stitches on the inside of my mouth, but I was like, I'm not going to the hospital. So I just took my lunchbox. They had my car towed and I walked down 37 to the nearest fast food restaurant. I went to the bathroom and got high. Like that was my thing. Like to run away from my problems, I would get high.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Like I thought that as long as I could have that, like everything will be all right. If I could just get one more, everything will be all right. But it was just piling on me. I got another car. Like I hid it from my parents. It was like a Sunday or something. And I was driving down Route 37 again, going home towards Lavalette, driving erratically. I was smoking weed and a cop's behind me, pulls me over, notices I'm messed up, pulls me out of the car, asks me if I have anything. I said, yeah, I have a little bit of weed. He says, oh, that weed's practically legal. I'm looking for heroin or something. I said, another cop car pulls up. They go, listen, we could either impound your car or you can give us permission to search it. We already know you have weed in a bowl, but we want to know if there's anything else. So long story short, they search my car. They find bunch of empty bags, paraphernalia, needles, you know, everything. And I got arrested. This goes my second trip to detox. I went to the same place, 7 days. I stayed at that place and did a 30-day inpatient treatment where I wasn't allowed to leave, 30 days, attended groups and everything. I remember sitting in there and for like the first time I was like, okay, I know I cannot drink. Like, I can't drink. I can't do anything because it's just going to lead me back. And if you hooked me up to a lie detector test and you said, Dean, do you want to drink? Do you want to get high anymore? I would have said no, and I would have passed with flying colors because, like, with every fiber in my being, like, I just wanted to get my life back. Like, I didn't want that. I did the 30 days. I told my therapist. My family came in for a meeting. My therapist was like, I really think Dean's serious. I think he's got it this time. And I was like, I feel really good. And I know I can't drink. I know I got to be stone cold sober. I'm going to go to meetings.
So you felt that too?
Oh, yeah.
You felt that too? You felt good? You're like, yeah, this is it.
Absolutely. I was like, I knew I couldn't do any of that anymore. I got out of that rehab. I guess it was early July. I don't know what the exact date was. I know I was pissed because I was in rehab and I missed like all these shark tournaments I love doing.
Yeah.
That was on my mind. Like, I can't believe I'm stuck in here. But by the end of it, I was happy I was there because I thought I knew what I had to do. I get out of the treatment. I'm home. I'm going to meetings every day. And it was like the fourth day I was out of treatment. And I woke up and it was like 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. My parents run a family business, a motel in La Valette. So everybody was gone. My dad was at work. My mom was at the motel. And she would leave me her car so I can go to meetings. I was going to a meeting at noon every day. And like, I woke up and like this thought just came over me, like, this would be a good time to have a drink. Why not? And I had no defense. Like, that thought popped into my mind and that's all that mattered. I went into the liquor cabinet. I got gin. I got some orange juice and I filled up a big water bottle with gin and orange juice. And I started drinking. And 4 hours from that first sip of alcohol, like 4 hours to the minute, I was in a welfare hotel room in Seaside Heights with a needle in my arm again. Like, just like that, man. Just like that. There was no like slow progression like the last time.
4 hours.
It was alcohol off to the heroin. Couldn't believe it. I was there again. This was like on like a Sunday and I knew I was going back to work on Monday. So I did that Sunday. I went back to work on Monday. I was working in Jersey City. I worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday's payday. And I'll never forget this. I was driving home on the turnpike. Good day at work. Like, nothing went wrong. Hadn't gotten high since that Sunday. I was doing all right. And it was almost like my mind went on autopilot. And before I knew it, I was in Newark and I was cashing my check. And I was driving down, like, just looking for like the sketchiest place in Newark. These are like bad neighborhoods.
Oh, yeah.
But when I tell you, like, they see like a young white kid driving down these streets,
yeah,
they come running out to your car. What do you need? What do you need? Yeah. I mean, I would park my car and walk down to the street and just walk up to random people and be like, yo, you got any heroin? You got any heroin? So I ended up getting like $500 worth. And at this point, it wasn't really heroin anymore. And it's not out there right now. It's more fentanyl, car fentanyl. I mean, this is horse tranquilizers that they're putting in this stuff. And I remember getting onto the turnpike, pulling over. As I got onto the turnpike on the entrance ramp, I pulled over onto the shoulder. I remember breaking open the bags and dumping them out. And I was like, wow, this seems like a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to be careful, like, cause my tolerance is low. And I remember doing what I had to do. And I started driving again. And I remember pulling back onto the turnpike. And then the next thing I remember, I was getting pulled out of my car by a state trooper.
Completely blacked out and blacked in at that moment?
I got onto the turnpike. I started driving up to the toll booth. I overdosed and I swerved into like the oncoming traffic of people coming out of the toll booth the other way. And I got in a head-on collision with a lady. Thank God that it was by a toll booth and we were going relatively slow. But who knows how long I was slumped over my steering wheel, because by the time the state troopers and the ambulance got there to Narcan me to pull me out of it, I don't know how long it was. Like, I still don't know to this day, but they Narcaned me and pulled me out of the car and I got arrested. And here I am in state police barracks somewhere outside of Jersey City, handcuffed to the bench, like looking down at the ground and like, just like, how did I get here again? Like, and for the first time in my life, like, I realized, like, after I hit this lady, thank God she was okay. I mean, I vividly remember the police officers telling me, she's okay. Like, you got really lucky. For the first time in my life, I realized that, like, I wasn't just harming myself, because my mother cried to me and begged me, like, why can't you just stop? Like, and I go, I'm not hurting anybody but myself. And I didn't have an answer for her. Like, why can't you just stop? Like, I wish I could have.
Yeah.
Still can't tell you to this day why not? I mean, I was sitting in that cell and like, man, I'm just like a wrecking ball. Everybody I come in contact with, I harm in some sort of way. Always trying to get something over on somebody. I realized that I was going to die if I didn't do something about this. And then my ex-girlfriend drove all the way up there, picked me up. I went back to her house, which is it's in Normandy Beach. I remember like saying like, I got to go. I need to go to work tomorrow. Like I had just overdosed and gotten a head-on collision. And the only thing I could think of was going to work.
Oh, you said you had to go to work?
Yeah. What
Wow.
really was going through my mind, I had her drive me up to an ocean block, drop me off. I said, I just need some time to clear my head. And I remember I hid $300 in my shoe before she came and got me because I didn't want her to know that I had any money on me. She dropped me off. I grabbed a bike and I drove right to Seaside and I got high again. After just overdosing and getting in this accident, my mother, the cops ended up calling my parents and they knew what happened. And my mom was like calling me nonstop. I finally went home at like 2:00 in the morning and she came in to check on me. And I was just like passed out upstairs, just like on the floor with all these little heroin baggies around me. She woke me up to make sure I was like still alive, and which I was just really high. And so that next day, that was July 31st of 2015. That was the last time I ever got high or drunk or anything. I went down to a place called the Seabrook House in South Jersey. I knew like I had to do something different. Like I knew I had to take this seriously or else like I was going to die. I met some really good people there. My roommate actually, who I met there, is like, I still talk to him like once a week. I went to this 30-day treatment program and there's like a week, 10 days left and they have this family matrix thing. And my father refused to come. My dad dropped me off at that place, the Seabrook House. And you've definitely seen Shawshank Redemption when Andy Dufresne says to Morgan Freeman, he's like, you get busy living or get busy dying. And my dad looked me in the eyes and said that to me and then just turned around and walked away.
Yeah.
So my dad refused to come to that family matrix thing. He was done with me. My mother came and it was like really emotional. And she talked to some people there and she actually sat next to my roommate's mother. His name's Matt. Like, I don't know if God put them there together in those seats, but they started talking and she brought up a place called the Granite House that was in New Hampshire. And it was a long-term treatment facility, 6 to 9 months. You live there. And she mentioned it to me and I was like, no way. Like, I'm staying in New Jersey. I'll go to a sober house around here. I was so worried about like getting back to work and making money because I thought that like money would solve all my problems. When in reality, like I had bigger issues than that. Like I needed to deal with like the problems up here and in here before like any of that could come to me. And I remember I fought her about it and she was like begging me to go there. And I was like, Mom, I'm not going to New Hampshire. And like I said, Matt was my roommate and his mom wanted him to go there too. And he was like, I think I'm going to go. And I was like, I don't know, man. And I just remember like I couldn't sleep for like 3 nights thinking about this. I remember one morning I woke up and it was like, I don't know what happened, but I woke up and I was like, I'm going. Like I called my mother. I like asked somebody, I was like, I need to use the phone right now. I called my mother. I said, Mom, go and set it up. She started crying and she said, you know, it's a good decision because if you said you weren't going, me and your father weren't coming to pick you up. You were on your own.
Yeah.
My dad picked me up, drove me straight up to New Hampshire. Me, my friend Matt, and my friend Chris, who I also met at the Seabrook House, all went there. A place called the Granite House. I mean, they introduce you to Alcoholics Anonymous, super strict, set up in 3 phases. The first phase is like, you're only allowed to leave the house to go to the convenience store. You have to be with somebody. You get $20 a week allowance for whatever cigarettes or drinks or snacks. And you have to show all your receipts so they know you're not like hiding money. You do all your own food shopping. You get $80 a week for that. It was strict.
Were you like this place when you first got up there or a little bit of both?
Kind of both. I went up there because they say it's a 3-month minimum. Like if you're coming to the Granite House, you have to stay for a minimum of 3 months, 90 days. So I went up there with the idea in my head that I was only going to be there 90 days. I got up there, man, and I was like, I'm a big kid. I was 180 pounds soaking wet when I went to rehab. For put that example, like I've been sober for 4 years. I weigh 260 pounds now. and I'm not like overweight or anything.
Yeah,
I'm just like, I'm a big person. I mean, I have a picture of me at my brother's wedding. And I mean, I look at it and I have it saved in my phone. And I look at it from time to time just to remind myself, like, I never want to go back to that. But like my suit's hanging off me. My cheeks are sucked in. I mean, I was just looked like a zombie. I mean, my eyes were sunken in. So I got up to this granite house and I don't know if you're familiar with 12-step programs, but Alcoholics Anonymous is a 12-step program. And I got introduced to that. I was handed the Alcoholics Anonymous book. We call it the Big Book. That night, I went to a meeting. I got a sponsor immediately. I started working with the sponsor. I started going through the steps. And within like a week to 10 days, I was like, something changed in my head. And like for the first time, like I thought, like I had hope that like, if I really try and I like put my heart and my soul into this, like I think I can get this. Like I have that feeling. And I called my mom and I told her that. And I said, if I do this honestly, I think I can get this under control. And like honesty is like a huge part of the program, man. Like you have to be honest about everything. Like can't lie about anything. And I mean, I put it all out on the table. And what I liked most about this place is, as opposed to other rehabs I've been to, you go to other rehabs, like, okay, like you just new admittee, you have to go sit down with the doctor. You sit down with the doctor and kids would go in there, sit down with the doctor and be like, oh, I have depression. And the doctor would prescribe them depression medicine. I sat down with the doctor at this place and I told him, I think I might be depressed. Like I thought maybe I really was depressed. And instead of writing me a prescription, he said, how about this? You come back to me in 2 weeks. But in those 2 weeks, I want you to, when you guys go to the gym every day, I want you to take a run. I want you to work out. But I'm not prescribing you anything until we see how you feel in 2 weeks. And like that to me was huge because instead of just writing me a script,
right,
I realized after the 2 weeks that I wasn't depressed. You know, I started settling into this place. I just hit it with 110%. I stayed there for 6 months. I was supposed to be there for 3. I think I graduated in 6.5 months. I remember calling my mom. I remember me and my friend Matt made a pact. Like, listen, man, let's just see this thing through. Like, you stay, I'll stay. Like, let's just see it through. Like, what do we have to lose? We're not missing anything back home. Like, this is our lives we're talking about. And I called my mom and said I wanted to stay the whole time. And they were more than happy.
Yeah.
My mother, I think, was actually finally sleeping at night. She wasn't up worrying about me. And I saw it through and I graduated 6.5 months. And they asked me to be the manager of one of the houses. There's 3 separate houses. The first phase was like super strict. The second phase was a little more lenient. You had to get a job in the second phase. You had to work. I think you can only work like 30 hours a week, so you didn't overdo it. But they slowly got you used to like a normal life. Mm-hmm. And the third phase was a house that was like a block away where you lived on your own with other people in the program. And they wanted me to manage that house. So like, I would live for free, but I would enforce the rules at that house. So I did that for another 5 or 6 months. And then I was ready to move on from there. I moved out of there and I got an apartment with 2 other kids that were both sober. And I lived there for a year. You know, this whole time I was charged. When I got arrested there in Newark, I was charged with possession of heroin, DWI. So I had been charged with the DWI and the possession charge. So I didn't have a license, so there was no reason. I was in no rush to get back to New Jersey. Plus, up there, I got set up with this guy. His name was John. And I met him through mutual friends. And he was looking for somebody who struggled with addiction issues, who was an athlete growing up. I met him for coffee one day, and he had lost his daughter, who was an exceptional basketball player, to a heroin overdose. Her name was Sumner Ann Kesty. And I sat down with this guy for about an hour in a coffee shop in Manchester, New Hampshire, and he explained to me what he wanted to do. And basically what he wanted to do was go to sports teams, local New Hampshire high school sports teams, and have a PowerPoint presentation set up where he educates the kids on opioid awareness, because New Hampshire and Massachusetts up there is really, really bad. Yeah. So he had this great idea to try to educate them to like high school basketball teams or any sports teams. But he wanted somebody who was young, who was an athlete growing up, to tell their story so the kids had somebody to relate to. He's like, listen, I'm 60 years old. I have a gray beard.
Yeah.
Standing up here talking to these kids isn't going to get through to them, somebody like you who's still getting old, but we're still somewhat young.
Yeah.
And we started off with a basketball team, and it morphed into full student body presentations in front of the entire high school, 800 kids, 500 kids, health classes. We would go to town meetings and give the presentation to like towns where the opioid crisis was really bad. And it just morphed into like this awesome thing where we would just go around and talk to these kids. And that helped me tremendously. It helped him with the loss of his daughter. I mean, I still talk to him today, and it was just like a really, really, really cool experience to like actually give back for once, because for so long, man, I took and I took and I took, and I don't regret anything that happened to me. Like if I could go back and change it, I don't think I would, because without what happened to me, without what I went through, like I wouldn't be half the person I am today. If I could tell my story and help like a few kids, like maybe, that's what I told them. Like when I talked to them, like if you guys go to college next year and you're at a party and somebody hands you a little baggie with some powder or some pills in it and say, hey, try this. Like, I want you to just think of me. Like, think of Dean standing up here and telling you his story. Like, he tried that powder the one time and he almost died.
Yeah.
Like, if I could help one kid and steer him in the other direction, then.
Yeah. That's huge for them too, because you're not taking the standard approach where you're like, don't do drugs, because
exactly.
That's almost like, don't think of the color red. You're going to think of the color red right away. It's like, you're being like, think of me. Look at where this brought me. It's not a road you want to go down.
Yeah.
You're not telling them what to do.
Exactly. And like, I tell them, like, listen, man, I understand it's high school. Like, you guys are starting to drink, and I'm not telling you that drinking is gonna, is this terrible thing. Like, you're young, and I understand. And like, I was in your shoes. I'm just telling you to be aware of what you're doing, and like, be aware of your decisions, and be aware of your surroundings and who you associate with, because you associate with the wrong person or you try the wrong thing, it could change your life forever. I mean, it changed my life dramatically. I'm in a unique position today where I can help other people. You know what I mean? Like, I could sit here and play the pity party and say, oh, poor me, look at all this stuff. My life was so hard. Look at all the stuff I went through. But I mean, listen, it happened. The past is the past. You know what I mean? It's part of who I am. So why not talk about it? Like, I'm not ashamed of it anymore.
Yeah, you own every part of it. That's powerful.
I own up to it, made my mistakes. I had a rough couple of years there. I hurt a lot of people, but I'm on the other side of it. I made a lot of amends. My family trusts me again. You know what I mean? So like, if I could talk about it, I'll talk to anybody about it. I'll talk to a brick wall about it if he'll listen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just went to my high school. Sorry, man, but I'm going to speak at my high school in May. So beautiful. I think that'd be really good.
That is awesome. I got a couple questions for you.
And shoot away.
All right. So, can you help somebody that doesn't want to be helped? How, like your mom trying to help you, like she's begging and everything. Like, how do you get through to somebody that doesn't want to be helped? Or do you just have to let them run their course?
Pretty much. In my experience and like dealing with a lot of people who went through what I went through, they have to hit enough pain to want to change. Like, they have to hit enough consequences to want to change. Something, they have to see it. Like, somebody who goes to work every day, gets a paycheck, is able to pay their mortgage or able to hide it from their family, it doesn't have any consequences, may not see that they have a problem. Like, they have to hit that pain to want to make a change. And like, I think 98% comes from within. Like, they want to have to do it. Can you push them in the right direction? Yeah, of course.
Right.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, they have to want it.
Absolutely. Okay. And so how did you go about reintroducing yourself to life in New Jersey? Because you still are on the fishing boats, you're still working, you're still around people that you grew up with. How do you successfully reintroduce yourself to your life?
So, I mean, I stayed up in New Hampshire for 2 years, made sure I had a really good grip on my sobriety, my network in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, having other sober friends. I had been back to New Jersey a bunch of times while I was living up there for holidays or just a week here, a week there, see my family, but just immersed myself in recovery. Like, I did everything I possibly could because I wanted it so bad. And I got to a point where, like, In the beginning, the first couple months, I would think about it all the time. Now, I mean, I can't tell you the last time I thought about having a drink or getting high or anything like that. I mean, it's just, I was so far removed from it. And like, yeah, when I moved home, was it weird being back in my parents' house and passing all these old places where I used to pick up or I used to meet up with drug dealers? Yeah, it is. But you have to be confident in your recovery. You have to stay connected through whatever helps you. For me, and for like a lot of people I know, Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah, was I a drug addict? Yes. But was I also an alcoholic? Yes. Is there Narcotic Anonymous meetings? Yeah, there's Narcotic Anonymous meetings. And if that works for you, great. What worked for me was AA. So I stick with that. You know what I mean? I have friends in the rooms. I talk to people. It's just staying connected in that recovery network to keep it fresh in your mind and always wanting it. Like, I have things in my life today that like I never want to lose. I have my family back in my life, my grandmother, my brother, and my sister. I mean, my sister told my parents that she didn't want to see me anymore before I went away the last time. Now my sister lives right up the street from me, and I go over and cut her lawn for her, help her out.
Yeah.
What I can. It's just having that mentality of never wanting to go back. Life's too good. Life's too short, and life's too good to ever go back for me.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% committed to this.
And Dean, what is one piece of advice that has resonated with you over your last couple years that you would like to gift to anybody that's suffering through this, whether it's the person, their family, anybody affected by this disease? What would be your message to them?
Never give up. I mean, I don't care how far into addiction you are. If you're homeless, if you're eating out of garbage can, it doesn't matter how low you get. The lower you get, you can only go up. I mean, never give up. Never give up on your loved ones. Yeah, you're going to have to show them tough love. You're going to have to make boundaries with them. Yeah, you may have to kick them out of your house to help them hit a little bit of pain to want to change, but never give up on them. You know what I mean? Because people who are suffering from addiction, you know, you talk to them once and it could be the last time you talk to them. I would say just never give up on whoever it is. Never give up on yourself, because there's always hope. Like, there's hope in this. As unfortunate as it is, and like how many people are dying, there's hope. I didn't want to be another statistic. Just keep the hope, keep the faith. Like, change is possible. You're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices, but it's possible. Anybody can do it. So never give up.
Besides AA, do you feel like you have to replace the addiction with a hobby, or do you feel like you have to really dive into something else to, or at least for the very beginning, to keep your mind going or off of it?
Yeah, in the beginning, definitely you have to stay busy, so to say, like in AA, or they say 90 meetings in 90 days. Like, make sure you make a meeting every day. You know, I talked to people who went to 3 meetings a day for the first like 4 months because they didn't want to drink again, but they also knew that if they were alone, like, they probably were going to drink. Like, you hear that saying, an idle mind is the devil's playground. Like, that rings true for me, especially in the beginning. Always had to be talking to somebody or going to a group or going to a meeting just to keep my mind occupied until my brain chemistry started repairing itself, because it rewires your brain. The dopamine, it rewires everything. So like, it takes a long time for your brain to repair itself. But yeah, definitely. You got to stay occupied. I mean, now I can come home from work and I could like take a shower and sit down on my couch and put the TV on and just relax. Like, I never to be able to do that. I know it might not seem like much, but for me, like, that's one of the greatest things, is to be able to like just relax by myself, be in my own head and be okay with it. Not having to have that external influence to make me feel better. Like, I'm okay today.
Awesome. And Dean, if anybody hears this episode and just wants to reach out, would you be willing to shoot your email address out here for people that might just need some help? And
yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. What's your email?
Dean, DEANMAL 999 @gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, Dean, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you putting all the cards on the table. It's a phenomenal story, and it's so phenomenal because of how well you're doing and how you're giving back and helping people, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's it, man. You're not here for a long time, but you might as well make the most of it while you're here.
Absolutely. All right, brother. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Kev.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast and spread the good word. My chiropractic practice is located in West Orange, New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. You can also find us on Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. All of my information is on my website at drkevinpecca.com, drkevinpecca.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca for podcast episodes, patient testimonials, and educational videos. I have daily affirmations and inspirational quotes on Instagram at Easel Affirmations, EASEL Affirmations. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at drkevinpecca@gmail.com, drkevinpecca@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Cheers.